The Isle of Wight, with its sublime natural landscape and outstanding beauty, is a wonderful place to live. The island has a population of over 140,000 people, however 11,397 of this population are between the ages of 60 to 64, which is the biggest age proportion of groups. It's because of its relaxed style of living that makes the island a popular retirement place. Therefore, the majority of island news is aimed towards the ageing population of the island, leaving little coverage in the island's reporting of young media. Is this because the youth's opinion isn't considered as important, or is the youth just not interested in voicing their thoughts?
Well, yeah, that's the case, but I think that's only because young people don't go looking for it.
I think the older are in control.
There is a greater involvement at an older age, perhaps, with local news.
This documentary is going to investigate why the island's media is dominated by an older perspective and why no one has tried or succeeded in putting forward a younger view. But first, I want to find out how the people who are in charge of the media industry here on the island got to their position.
Well, I moved to the island in 1984 as a trainee, as a sports reporter. I came as the sports editor of the county press. So it wasn't particularly the Isle of Wight or the county press that drew me here, it was the job as a sports editor. But I came to really love the island in the first few years I was here, and I never looked back and never wanted to move away from here.
Well, I think radio, whether it be Isle of Wight radio or anywhere else, you know, you either want to do it or you don't want to do it. Very few people just sort of fall into it without having some kind of media wish.
It really started out of a passion for what's going on around the island. There's just always so much going on in terms of art exhibitions, music gigs.
The move to news was driven by the readers, really. They were concerned about things that were happening on the island, particularly the change in the schools from 3-tier to 2-tier, and that drove us to then find out more about it and do more hard news on that side. But the shift on the Wight itself was Ventnor Blog as was run 7 years, and then everyone forever said to us, isn't it just about Ventnor? And after 7 years of hitting a head against a wall and saying, no, it's about the whole island, we changed the name.
You have to have a bit of a passion for it, because obviously you have to work hard to get into it, don't you, really? Into most media sort of things. And of course I wanted to do presenting, and I was doing like a music degree at the same time. So it sort of all added up to me, and I really wanted to be involved. And like Paul said, it's great because we get, you know, the community involved, and yeah, I think that's mainly the reasons why for me.
It's clear that most of the news which is popular amongst the island is youth orientated, such as the festival and the bestival. So why aren't we hearing the events from the perspective from the younger generation? Is it because the island is dominated and controlled by an older perspective and therefore don't give a chance to young people?
Yeah, definitely. It comes up every time, and every generation comes up the same, and there's much more to do now than there was at the time, but there's not representation. I think it needs to be dealt with, but as I say, it's not a business model on its own.
Actually, we've got, we did Studio B, we've got young people to present their own show. We have Live and Local as well, where we have a lot of young people and all sorts of musicians from the island come in and do really sort of long interviews on there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think we could always do with more young talent. Is there a lack of it? I don't think there's a lack of young talent on the island. I think it's more a case of us being able to encourage those young people to actually knock on our door and actually let people know that Isle of Wight radio is open for business for the next generation of radio broadcasters on the Isle of Wight.
I would argue that we are really trying very hard to give young people a chance to have their say. There are opportunities for young people to have their say here. There's a good youth council, which we cover in the paper. I know the radio do a lot of stuff with young bands and things. The Isle of Wight radio do that. It's hard because society is dominated by older people, particularly on the Isle of Wight. the councillors, the people who run the island are very much in the older age group, because the younger people don't tend to get involved in society quite so much until they're a bit older. There are exceptions, but there's not a massive number of people who do. If we are older, the people who are running the paper, it doesn't mean that we're not interested in what younger people are doing.
I think the older in control. Yeah. If I had any say or any business involved now, I'd make sure I got the youth voice, because you need to be attractive to the youth as well. And and what do we get in the county press? A youth page, which is basically there so the grandparents can buy the paper because they're proud of their granddaughter or grandson being in a school photo or something. I don't think it's done with much integrity, so I think it needs to be a youth voice, yeah.
But obviously, from a commercial point of view, there are more older people on the Isle of Wight than there are younger people, so market forces dictate that they will take priority.
Well, I think money talks, really, and the sort of people who have the money to set up a media centre or distributor are the people who are older and have that experience in the industry, so they know who to talk to and they know what they're doing. But at the same time, I've been lucky that one of those will give me the opportunity, because I don't it's just me and Dave in the studio. We do it all by ourselves, and we've been given all the equipment, all the everything necessary for it, so we've been given that opportunity. Well, I don't want to say the old people, but people who run stations like this aren't our age.
Yeah.
But so we've been lucky in that respect, but there could be more done, I think.
Well, I'd like to think that we do appeal to all age groups, but I think these days we work very hard to engage all aspects of all parts of society, through youth pages, sport, entertainment stuff. I'd like to think there's something in there for everybody, but I take your point about it being older people who tend to talk about the news more and everything, because I think older people do tend to get involved more in news, because they have mortgages, they pay council tax, and it gives them a real involvement with what's going on with them, and they sort of want to know how their money's being spent and things like that. So there's a lot of news in the county press that is about that, what the council's doing with their money, what the health service is doing with their money, what the police are doing with their money. So there is a greater involvement at an older age, perhaps, with local news. And we do try and get a lot in the paper that is about young people. Our youth pages every week are about that. There's lots of stuff in the entertainment pages that is done by young people or is for young people. But we've also just launched this new website called Yoppel, which is specifically aimed at the 15 to 24-year-olds on the island. And we've really worked hard at trying to engage with them on that, and we've been going around talking to groups of young people, really trying to see what they would like to write about. And so it's not older people writing for young people, it's young people writing for young people. It's been a long-standing sort of wish of mine to set up this website, and we've finally found a partner in HTP who are going to work with us on that. So we've got the finance to do it now, because it is quite costly to run something like that. But generally, yeah, there's been a lack of younger voices in the media, but I think it's always been the case. But I'm trying to address that and try to make it more accessible to young people, really.
Even though there are opportunities within the island's media, the majority of people who are involved in the industry here have got their experience from off the island. Would these professionals suggest for a young person who was interested in media to stay here on the island or move off to gain further experience from a different location?
Yeah, I think you've probably got to get off the island to get some wider experience. Try stuff. But then you don't know whether in 5 years' time there'll be those places to get that experience, or whether those places will change, whether there'll be different types of publications. There's a lot of flux in journalism at the moment, a lot of change. So it's difficult to say, but experience can never be a bad thing, can it?
A lot of people tend to go to university, do maybe a journalism degree or a media degree, come back, try and find some work. Our experience has been that it's been quite difficult for them to find work on the island because it is a sort of limited market, I suppose, in terms of there only being a certain number of media sources. But there are also a lot of freelance writers on the island, so that's something that once you become established, then you can live on the island and work for the nationals or work for magazines.
No, I agree. I don't think there is that lust. Good word. No, I think I've sort of fallen into this, and as much as I enjoy it, I don't know if I would have sought it out myself. So I think that's the way a lot of young people on the island feel that, I mean, besides, a lot of people do work experience with sort of companies like the County Press and Isle of Wight Radio, but outside of those two, if you think of the major names on the island, there isn't really that much in the way of media. So even if young people were to seek these opportunities, there aren't that many because there isn't enough sort of demand. We do live in the digital era, so especially paper and FM radio mediums could be dying down a little. So even if they were to take on new people, young people might not be at the top of the list these days.
I think that's quite difficult because, like Paul said, there are lots of opportunities here. I mean, it all depends on where you want to live and where you want to be. And if you work hard enough, if you approach people, if you want to get into radio, you know, then you come up here and you get involved. And if you want to stay on the island, that's fine. And you find out what part of media you want to work in and you do it. But obviously, we are an island. And, you know, over there probably are bigger opportunities. But it depends what you want, I think, really, as a young person. So I think it's up to you.
If you really look for it, and that's what it all comes down to, is actually really wanting to do it, not necessarily being forced with those opportunities.
As a father as well as a professional, I would say it's nice for young people to get off the island, go and see a bit of the world outside the Isle of Wight, get some experience, maybe get to a college that does good media courses.
Not really looking for a career out of this sort of thing yet. I'm sort of looking from the outside in, but from that perspective I'd say, yeah, I would, if I wanted to do this sort of thing, I would leave the island as soon as possible if something professional came up that would help me progress.
Tricky one. Part of me says get off here and go and get involved in the industry, then come back and bring what you've learnt back. The other part of me says if you'll disappear, then nothing's going to change. So stay here and make a difference.
The media industry here on the Isle of Wight is controlled by an older generation, as they are the ones with the funds to create newspapers, radio stations and other such media productions. However, this doesn't mean that there's no room for a younger voice within the industry. As an island we do have limited resources, but it has been proven that there are opportunities for the youth here on the island. It's up to us to go out and find them.